Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Nathan and today we are doing our fourth class overview for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. And today we are covering Cleric. Now, let me just say at the beginning, I love Clerics. I think Clerics are fantastic and honestly one of the best kind of intro classes for spellcasters. So, in this video, I will be talking about kind of the class overview and my opinion on what their role is, and then I'll discuss their features from levels 1 to 20, and I've kind of broken that down into sections to make it easier. I'll talk about multiclassing with Cleric, both as the main class and as a dip for other classes. Then I'll kind of summarize and talk about my ratings of the core class. And again, as with all the videos in this series, I'm not going to be diving deep into what the subclasses do. But I will kind of talk about the general gist of their features and that kind of thing, and we will cover those more when we do subclass review videos in the future. So let's talk about the class overview and role of the Cleric. So first, the Cleric is a wisdom-based prepared caster. This means that every long rest you can choose from all of the Cleric spells available and prepare a certain number of them. This means that they are inherently very flexible, and there's a lot of room for error because you can always just change your spells on your next long rest, and this also makes them pretty adaptable to any kind of general situation. So if I was going to summarize kind of what their role is, they are what I would call a midline support and damage dealer. And by midline, I consider there kind of be three areas of combat. You've got the front line, which are usually your beefy melee type characters. And the back line is your squishier, more range type characters. And the midline, usually that means that you want to be playing somewhere between them. So as a cleric, you have abilities that are relatively short ranged. So you want to stand in such a position that you're close enough to your frontline characters to be able to support and aid them, but also stand close enough to your backline characters that you can also support and aid them if things happen. You're not the most durable, but you are durable enough to take a few hits just with the core class. Yeah, overall, clerics are very flexible and can do a variety of things depending on how you set them up. So, and that is another thing to add here because of that flexibility. They can be competent in just about every pillar of play, whether it's combat, exploration, and infiltration, or even social situations because of their spells and some of the things that they have. All right, so class features. Let's talk about what clerics get at level 1 because it is a lot. First of all, they are a D8 hit dice class. This is the second lowest, but is pretty standard for most of the classes in the game. And this is the biggest hit dice any full caster gets. In terms of proficiency, you get proficiency with light armor, medium armor, and shields as a cleric. I'm putting an asterisk here because some of the subclasses will actually give you heavy armor proficiency right at level 1, which is when clerics do get their subclass. As for weapons, they're proficient with all simple weapons, but once again, some of the subclasses will give you martial weapon proficiency. As for tools, they don't get any, and as for their saves, they get wisdom and charisma saves. And wisdom saves are targeted quite a bit, especially as you get toward higher tiers, and these are not bad. In terms of their skills, they get to pick 2 from the following list: history, insight, medicine, persuasion, and religion. Kind of a useful skill list in terms of social things. Usually you'd want to use your background to fortify other skills for what you want to do with your cleric in your game. Now, they also get spellcasting at first level, starting with 2 first level spell slots as they are a full caster. They get to know 3 cantrips. Their holy symbol is their casting focus is a holy symbol. Importantly, clerics can put their casting focus on their shield. So if you use your shield in one hand and say you have your other hand empty, you can still do all of your spell casting and still have a shield, which is something that is really nice. If you want to hold a weapon in one hand and have your shield on your other hand, you'll still be able to cast any spells that require vocal, somatic, and material components because a hand that's holding a spellcasting focus can be used to provide somatic components if the spell also has a material component. You just wouldn't be able to cast spells that with a vocal and somatic component without a material component unless you took the Warcaster feat later on. As for the number of spells they can prepare, you can prepare a number of spells equal to your cleric level plus your wisdom modifier, a minimum of 1. Obviously, their casting stat is wisdom, and they are a ritual caster. They can ritual cast any spell they have prepared that has the ritual tag. It takes like an extra 10 minutes, but you don't spend a spell slot to do so. And this is a nice thing, as clerics have a lot of nice utility rituals, and you'll probably have some room in your prepared slots to kind of have a ritual or two depending on your adventuring day. Now, as for the spells that clerics get at first level, generally speaking, with the cleric list, there's a lot of utility, and they've got the wonderful cantrip in guidance that is great for skills, whether it's yours or someone else's. In terms of their first level spells, they've got a few standouts in terms of damage, like things like Guiding Bolt. But the rest of them are kind of support and utility. They've got some good healing spells and things like Healing Word. They've got good defense and things like Shield of Faith or Sanctuary. And overall, kind of the way the cleric list is there are one or two standouts for damage at each level, and the rest of them are kind of support spells. So if you know what you're doing, you can pick out kind of the best spells, and then you fill the rest of your spell list with things that match the situation your cleric is going to be in. Now, also at first level clerics get their divine domain, their subclass, and there are three main things that they get here. Most of these classes have what I would call a ribbon feature. This is usually a less powerful but kind of more flavorful feature. And a lot of these classes, on some of them, these ribbons are actually quite powerful. But these can range from skill proficiencies or armor proficiencies to a wide variety of things. They also get a core feature of some kind that kind of defines what their cleric subclass is all about. And additionally, all clerics get a list of domain spells. This gives you a couple spells at first, second, third, and fourth, and fifth level spells, which will happen at levels 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, that are always prepared for you and don't count against your number of prepared spells. And some of these, depending on your subclass, are going to be exclusive spells to that cleric subclass that aren't on the core cleric list. Now, as for what these subclasses are, there are quite a few of them here. From the player's handbook, we got knowledge, life, light, nature, tempest, and trickery, and as well war. From Xanathar's Guide to Everything, we got forge, grave, and order. Well, forge and grave. And then from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, we got order, peace, and twilight. There's also the Death Domain Cleric out of the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Arcana Domain Cleric out of the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. I think Cleric probably has the most subclasses of any class. And usually these are kind of all based on different kinds of gods, as a cleric is a divine caster and kind of serves those. Now, I've marked with an asterisk all of the subclasses that get heavy armor and or martial weapon proficiency at level 1. And as you can see, it's about half of them. You've got life, nature, tempest, war, forge, order, twilight, and death are all things that get extra proficiencies in weapons and or armor. And importantly, these are proficiencies that you will get if you multi-class into cleric, because it's a ribbon feature as part of the subclass. Now, at level 2, they follow the full caster spell slot progression. I'm not going to talk about that too much, but you can see that tracking in the spells on the right. But they get their channel divinity, and they get to 1 channel divinity charge per short or long rest, and you can spend your charges to do a wide variety of things. Now, all clerics have Turn Undead as a channel divinity option. This basically lets you present your holy symbol, and you can scare off undead and give them the turn condition, which forces them to basically spend their turn running from you. And this can be really nice to control groups of undead. And in a campaign that features a lot of undead, this is an incredibly powerful feature that you'll probably be using quite a bit. It lasts for a minute or until I think you damage them. So this is something that you can use to control and then pick them off one at a time. Also, all clerics get at least one domain-specific use of their channel divinity. And then all clerics, as of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, get the Channel Divine Power feature. What this does is you can spend a use of your channel divinity at this level once per long rest to recover 1 spell slot, and the level of it can be no higher than half your proficiency modifier rounded up. Importantly, this doesn't come back on a short rest like your channel divinity charge, but if you take multiple short rests throughout the day, you can get back a spell slot and then use your channel divinity for other things. And in a campaign without a lot of undead, you probably using this for your channel divinity more often than anything else to get back spell slots. Clerics can be pretty spell slot intensive, and when you don't have any spell slots, you're just resorting to firing cantrips, which doesn't always feel the best. Now, at level 3, clerics are now, they get access to second level spells, and that means they're second level domain spells. In terms of their spell list, there are a few standouts here I want to mention. Spiritual Weapon is fantastic at this level, as it's a concentration-free use of your bonus action that allows you to whack enemies with this, weapon of your gods. It doesn't scale super well, and later on you probably have better uses for your bonus action. But at this level, it is a great thing to have, and you can always unprepare it later. They also get a bunch of really nice support spells here, like Aid, and in particular, Enhance Ability. This lets you buff yourself or an ally and give them advantage on all checks with a certain attribute, and that includes skill checks. So you can use this to, buff your party's face for their persuasion checks, or bump your best perception character, which might be you, and that kind of thing. Importantly, this spell requires concentration, as does guidance, so you can't stack these both from your same cleric. And again, the spell list has a few standouts for damage at this level. It's Spiritual Weapon, and the rest of it is flexible depending on what you want to do. At level 4, clerics get their first ability score increase or feat, as well as an additional cantrip. In terms of what feats clerics typically prioritize, they usually prioritize protecting their concentration, because they usually want to cast a powerful concentration spell. So things like Resilient Constitution and or Warcaster are pretty common on clerics. If you plan on using a certain spell that you'll get access to next level, clerics will also want to boost their wisdom. So feats like Telekinetic, which gives you a nice use of your bonus action, or just straight up boosting your wisdom, are often things that clerics will take. Now, at level 5, clerics are now, get access to their third level spells. And the main standout here for clerics is the Spirit Guardian spell. What this does is it's a concentration spell, creates an aura of 15 feet around you, reduces all enemies' movement speed by half, and then when an enemy starts their turn or enters the aura for the first time on a turn, they take radiant damage. It can be radiant or necrotic based on your character's alignment, and this scales an additional d8 with every spell level. And if they fail their wisdom save, it's 3d8 and then 4d8, etc. as you boost it up. Now, importantly, this is one of those spells that has an enter or starts their turn in the area clause, which means you can stack it with force movement to potentially trigger the damage more than once per round. And this is just a core. This is probably the core damage spell of clerics, and they don't really get much better than this going forward. And so you'll typically find a lot of cleric builds will like to use this spell, fortify their concentration, and potentially just dodge with their action and stand in the front lines and shred people with it. They also get the Destroy Undead feature here, which this is when an undead fails their save against your turn undead channel divinity. If they're CR 1/2 or less, they just explode and die. And can be really fun, and will, if you have a cleric and you're fighting large hordes of zombies at this point, you can potentially neutralize them with this. And this is a feature that will scale and can provide some really fun flavor for your cleric, especially if you're fighting a lot of undead. Now, at level 6, clerics get a couple improvements here. Their channel divinity, they now get 2 uses per short or long rest, and Harness Divine Power is now 2 uses per long rest. So more spell slots. Your proficiency bonus is 3 at this point, so those additional spell slots can be 2nd level or higher. And then all clerics also get another Divine Domain feature here. This typically further defines the subclass and is another kind of core feature. And the power level varies, but it's usually pretty strong. And being level 6 cleric, you've got your core 3rd level spells, and this feature, whatever it is from your subclass, clerics usually feel quite strong at this point. Now, at level 7, clerics get access to their 4th level spells, including their 4th level domain spells. And there aren't really any standouts here in terms of damage, but there are some good control options in things like Banishment. And in my opinion, the best cleric spells, there's a few good ones from here on out, but most of the good ones are 3rd level or lower, especially the ones that can upcast well, like Spirit Guardians. But still, you're a full caster, and your power will only grow as your spell slots get better. At level 8, they get their second ability score increase or feat, and your Destroy Undead feature improves to CR1 undead or less will pop if they fail their save against your turn undead. And then they also get a Divine Domain feature here, which is going to be a damage boost. So there's kind of two different core ones that all of the cleric subclasses will get, and then there's an additional option that you can take instead that was added out of Tosh's. So what those are, some of the cleric subclasses will get a feature called Divine Strike, which lets you add a d8 of damage to a melee attack, typically once per turn. The damage type varies kind of based on the subclass. Some of them that are intended to be more caster focused will get a feature called Potent Cantrip, which lets them add their Wisdom modifier to the damage of any cleric cantrip they cast. And then the option that you can choose to take instead of either of these is called Blessed Strikes. Again, this is out of Tasha's, and this is once per turn when you damage an enemy with a cantrip or an attack. And only during your turn, you can add a d8 of radiant damage. Generally speaking, I like Blessed Strikes more than the other options, and will often take it on my builds, but take whatever kind of fits your character and how you're going to play your cleric. At level 9, they get their final tick of domain spells at 5th level, and they also get the 5th level cleric spells. And again, some of these are good, but usually for damage, you're better off upcasting something like Spirit Guardians. But read through the spells and get to know them, because there are some fun ones here. At level 10, they get their 5th cantrip, and they also get the Divine Intervention feature. This is a pretty cool feature. As an action, once per long rest, you can ask for the aid of your deity, and you roll percentile dice, so a d100. And if you roll your cleric level or less, your deity will intervene. And the book says a casting of any cleric spell or domain spell would be appropriate. And obviously the power of this kind of varies based on your DM. But you can potentially cast 9th level spells here at level 10, here admittedly with a 10% chance. But once you succeed with your Divine Intervention, you can't use it for 1 week, so 7 days. And at this level with a 10% chance, you're probably best off using this to ask for some kind of high-level support spell and that kind of thing. At level 11, our Destroy Undead improves to CR2, and we get access to 6th level spells and our 6th level spell slot. There aren't a huge number of standouts here in terms of damage, but there are a lot of nice support spells like Hero's Feast, although that one does have an expensive material component. Although if you ask your deity for a Hero's Feast with Divine Intervention, it won't take a material component, which is nice. At level 12, we get our 3rd ability score increase or feat, and nothing else. At level 13, we get access to 7th level spells and nothing else. Again, a lot of the highlights here are more kind of support and utility focused, and if you want to do damage, you're probably best off upcasting your lower level spells like Spirit Guardians that scale well. At level 14, all we get is a tick to our Destroy Undead at CR3. And honestly, some of these later cleric levels, the fact that you don't get much kind of feels a little bit bad. But cleric, they're again still a full spellcaster, and you're getting that power scaling from your spell slot progression. At level 15, we just get 8th level spells, and again, they're mostly utility focused. And if you want damage, you're best off upcasting your low level spells. At level 16, we get our 4th ability score increase or feat, and nothing else. And then at level 17, our Destroy Undead improves to CR4, and we get our last Divine Domain feature, which is the capstone. Now, the power obviously varies quite a bit on these, but some of them are very powerful, and they will give your cleric some really cool things that they can do if you manage to get here as a pure cleric. You also get 9th level spells, and clerics don't have anything super powerful as far as 9th level spells go, but again, 9th level spells are typically very powerful, and since you're a prepared caster, you can always change them out on a long rest and try out a bunch of different ones. At level 18, we get our final bump to our number of Channel Divinity and Harness Divine Power uses, so we now get 3 Channel Divinities per short or long rest, and we get 3 Harness Divine Powers per long rest. At this level, our proficiency bonus is 6, and so since level 13, when our proficiency bonus was 5, we would have been able to get back third level spell slots or lower. At level 19, we get our last ability score increase or feat, and at level 20, we get an improvement to Divine Intervention. So what this does is our call for aid is always answered when asked. So our chance last level was 19%, but now it is 100%. But it still has a 7-day cooldown. And this can be pretty powerful depending on how your DM does Divine Intervention. If your DM has done something fun or you've successfully used Divine Intervention as a cleric, please let me know in the comments. I want to hear about it. I want to hear all the crazy things that have happened. At this level, this can kind of basically function as an extra 9th level spell slot. And you can potentially go for damage spells off your Divine Intervention because you know that they will succeed. But again, it still has a 7-day cooldown, so use wisely. All right, so let's talk about multi-classing the Cleric. Now, as far as requirements go, you need to have 13 Wisdom to either multi-class out of Cleric or multi-class into Cleric. And if you take a level in Cleric and it's not your first level, you get proficiency in Light Armor, Medium Armor, and Shields. Now, importantly, because you get your subclass at first level, you can potentially also get heavy armor proficiency and or martial weapon proficiency, depending on what subclass you took. Now, in my opinion, Cleric goes best with Sorcerer and Wizard, and this may seem a little odd to you, as Sorcerers and Wizards obviously aren't wisdom-based characters, but in this case, this is a dip. So Sorcerers and Wizards really like to dip Cleric to get the medium armor and shield proficiency, as it makes them a lot sturdier. Likewise, clerics also like dipping sorcerer and wizard to get access to abjuration and other defensive type spells they don't have access to make them beefier. These are also full casters, so taking a level or 2 won't impact your spell slot progression, and so long as you don't really delay access to high level spells like the ones you want, like your core third level ones like Spirit Guardians, by too much, you won't feel very bad. Now, that said, Cleric also works with just about every other class in the game, depending on your build. Bards can use Cleric to fortify their lack of armor. Druids can work well with Cleric to potentially get a Divine Domain feature with just a small investment, and they're also a Wisdom-based caster, so the stats align. Fighters can potentially benefit from a little bit of spell casting and maybe, a first level feature. With monks, again, they're both wisdom-based, and so you can get some spell casting on your monk or potentially kind of scale into an interesting Gish type character that punches and both casts spells. Rangers are, another potential wisdom-based character, at least as a secondary stat, and you can use this to get potentially heavy armor on your ranger and, additionally, those first level features for free. Again, rogues can benefit from the armor proficiencies as well as the first level features and access to some spells, and warlocks are even another one that can benefit from the armor and the access to kind of those easy first level features. And kind of in summary, a level or 2 of Cleric can work very well for just about every class, although it doesn't particularly work well with Artificer and Paladin, and I don't recommend those. And Cleric can work very well as a dip or the main class with a lot of these. All right, so let's go into our summary and ratings, and I'll kind of talk about how I rate the Cleric. Now, in terms of offense, I give them a 3-star rating, so pretty average. They can hold their own, in particular because they have few standout spells that are very good, like Spiritual Weapon at low levels and then Spirit Guardians after that. And they can do reasonable damage, especially when you combine this with forced movement, either from your allies or feats like Telekinetic, which you can use to shove enemies into your Spirit Guardians. And overall, they can do a reasonable amount of damage per round and kind of hold their own here. Now, in terms of defense, I also give them a 3 out of 5 here. Well, they don't have access to abjuration spells, which would boost them pretty much over the edge here. They do get access to medium armor and shields, at least, potentially even heavy armor. And they also have healing spells and some other good defensive buff spells, which can make them quite durable. They can heal, and they're somewhat hard to hit. You just have, The only thing that keeps this from being a 5-star defensive core class is the lack of access to the suite of abjuration spells to defend yourself. Now, in terms of control, again, I give the Cleric a 3 out of 5 here. They have some potential good control spells, but it's nothing like what the Bard or a Wizard might pack. And they're able to control in a pinch, but they're a little bit of kind of a jack of all trades in this area, as you can see. They're kind of well balanced. Now, in terms of support, I give the Cleric a 4 out of 5 here. And again, this is because they've got healing, they've got good buff spells that can apply to you or your allies, and overall can do a pretty good job of helping out your allies or themselves. Now, skills, again, I give them a 3 out of 5 here. Now, the main reason for this is they've got 2 key spells in their Guidance Cantrip and the Enhance Ability spell. Again, they're both concentration, so you can't use both at the same time. But you can use these to boost your skills or your allies' skills, and so having a Cleric around can be very helpful here. And, this is obviously way better than just having a few proficiencies. Now, in terms of complexity, this is a rating where a higher rating means the class is harder to play, and a lower rating means the class is very easy to play. And I give the Cleric a 3 out of 5 here, which is pretty average, kind of right in the middle. And in my opinion, I think Cleric is probably the easiest full caster to play, just because of the forgiving nature of being a prepared caster, as well as, once you know kind of what the standout damage spells are, there's a lot of flexibility in preparing your list, and as long as you pick the main spells, you can't really go wrong, and even if you do, you can just fix it on your next session. So, thanks for watching. This has been my overview on Cleric. I hope you enjoyed. Cleric is one of my favorite classes, and this was pretty fun to put together. Our next subclass review will be on Druid in a couple weeks, and I hope to see you back then. Thanks for watching, and once again, my name is Nathan, and I will see you next time.